Oh, we tell them right away, get off the internet. Get off now. Don't be posting stuff. The law now has a statutory injunction that everybody has to abide by when the divorce is filed, that nobody can delete any electronically stored information. The courts have a way, too, that they can appoint people to take the phone and go back and look at it, even though it's been erased. You can still go back and find all that stuff.
Ace divorce attorney Rose Palermo is someone who will always tell it to you straight. Trust me, I know that firsthand, because Rose was also my divorce attorney. That was way before TikTok and Facebook, but knowing that she was in my corner got me through some very tough times. That's how I know Rose is someone you want to listen to. But she's also got quite the resume to back it up. For starters, there's a Supreme Court case with her name on it that still gets taught in law schools. And to think at least one of those law schools wouldn't give her a scholarship just because she's a woman. Well, she's an extraordinary woman at that. I'm Demetria Kalodimos. It's Banner and Company. Rose, you and I have a unique relationship, and I'm sure all of your former clients feel that way. I feel like we were in a foxhole together.
We were. We really were.
Do people tell you that?
Yeah. You know, I get into situations with people when you get to know people's darkest, moments and thoughts and everything. It creates a bond with you. And most of my clients, I end up feeling like I've adopted them, And now that I'm a little advanced in age, a lot of my guy clients call me mama.
Do they really?
Yeah, a lot of them do.
It's funny. My family still asks from time to time, how's Rose Palermo?
Really? Isn't that
Absolutely.
wonderful? That is so nice.
Because they felt that I was in really good hands at a hard time.
Well, thank you. I'm still at it, and I'm still doing that same thing for other people, but at least I try to.
Do you ever see folks who have reconciled
Very.
and you feel you know too much?
Yes. It's rare that they reconcile. And I will tell you that one of the things that I've really started to be bothered about are these prenups. Prenup is the new thing. I mean, everybody's doing prenups. And I think in a lot of cases they're warranted. For instance, if you've been married before and you've been married a good while and you split your assets and you have kids by the first marriage, you're getting married to somebody else, you ought to do a prenup because that was your first responsibility. But then if you're a young couple that's just starting off together and then all of a sudden one of them just is making a ton of money and the other one isn't, I have a case right now that I'm doing that I'm so distraught about it. I didn't even sleep good. The guy is an NFL player, and I mean a big time NFL player, not a Titans guy, but anyway, big time NFL player. He's got a massive contract, and the prenup that they're wanting this, and she's a young woman. They've been together for 4 years from college, and
First marriage for both?
Yes, no children, first marriage. And what they're offering her is so offensive. And then the wedding is planned very soon, and so she's going, I feel like I just go on and do it. I'll go on and sign it. And I've got such a bad feeling about even enabling it. You know what I'm saying? I just feel like this is terrible. So
do you think they can curse a relationship?
I think sometimes they can. I had a client one time who had a prenup the first time, and then he got divorced, and then he was marrying somebody else, and this woman was clearly a gold digger. I mean, you could just tell it, and we were all trying to get his managers, and all of us were trying to get him to do a prenup. And he said, "No, I'm not going to do it. I think it it curses the marriage." So I said, "Well, this is not going to last. We hope you understand that. And then, no, you're wrong, blah, blah. 6 months later,
Wow.
he calls me from a tour bus somewhere and says, well, I know y'all were taking bets on how long this was going to last. What number did you have? And I said 6 months. And he said, you're the winner.
Oh, okay. Let's back up a little bit. Way back, before you were one of Nashville's top divorce lawyers. Tell me the story of how you wound up at Vanderbilt and where you didn't go to law school.
So my family moved at some point to Shreveport, Louisiana, which one of my uncles had a restaurant there. And so my dad went up there to work in the restaurant. And I was still going to school in New Orleans, finishing high school. I stayed with my grandmother. So when I graduated, they had a private Methodist college, a little liberal arts school called Centenary College in Shreveport, Louisiana. Good school, small. And they always awarded a scholarship to the senior who graduated with the highest ranking in the history department and to law school at Tulane. So I was the winner. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, this is great, because I was always wanting to go to law school since I was about 12. So they awarded me the scholarship, and I went down to New Orleans to meet with the dean or whoever it was that I met with. And he said, well, I'm sorry to tell you this, but we can't give you the scholarship because you're a woman, and we need this spot for a man who is going to have to support a family. Now, keep in mind, this is like around 1964, and that the Civil Rights Act had just been enacted, and nobody thought about it applying to sex, even though it said sex. It was mainly thought of as a basis to give equality to mainly to black people. And so nobody thought about that sex was also in there. I didn't think about it, and I went, well, I'm not going to get that scholarship. So I went back to school, and then Vanderbilt had sent the assistant dean on a recruiting trip to different schools around the country to recruit people. And he asked me about what I wanted to do, and I told him the Tulane story. And he said, well, I can't offer you a scholarship the first semester, but if you come to Vanderbilt, if after your first semester, if you do well, I'll give you a scholarship. I'll guarantee you'll get a scholarship. So I went at the first semester. I ended up being second in my class the first semester. And so I went to his office and I knocked on the door. I said, was that good enough? He said, yes, it was. So I had a tuition scholarship for the rest of the way at Vanderbilt. Now, keep in mind, there were like 7 or 8 women in the whole law school.
I was going to say, law, 1960.
65. I was in 65 to 68, yeah. There were like seven or 8 women in the whole law school.
And you say you had been interested since 12.
Yeah, since
what
about
caused
12.
that? What sparked that?
This sounds so stupid, but Perry Mason.
No, I have interviewed judges who told me that it was Perry Mason.
And
I
would watch Perry Mason, and I would go, this is really good. And I will say this about the Perry Mason: they're rerunning them now all over the place, and my husband and I watch them because the Perry Mason shows were so realistic in a lot of ways, like the way they conducted the courtroom and the way the objections were made and the various things. They were more realistic in the way real law is than, say, Matlock, who really I kind of model myself after Matlock. My husband says I'm more Matlock than Perry Mason. But that was really a big influence on me. And I thought, well, that's what I want to do. So I just never thought about doing something else.
You had some other big names in your law school class, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Drop a few.
Sissy Daughtry, Martha Craig Daughtry. She actually started in the class two behind me. She was in with my husband's original class. She got married and had a baby, and so she had dropped out for a couple of years, and then she came back in my class. And then I also had a woman named Jane Ann Woods, who ended up being the commissioner of revenue for the state eventually. But Sissy turned out to be the first Supreme Court justice in Tennessee, and then later got appointed to the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is the Court of Appeals, for people who don't know, is like one drop below the Supremes. I mean, you go from there to the Supremes. So Sissy and Jane Ann and I and two other women were in our graduating class. And I will tell you a little story if you got time. I don't know how long I have to talk, but this is kind of funny. Another good friend of mine now is federal judge Aleda Trauger, who's marvelous.
Brilliant,
and
yeah.
Aleda went to Vanderbilt several years after I did, and she got to telling the story one night about how her class, now at that point they probably had 25 or 30 women in her class, had staged a coup and took over the men's bathroom at the law school because there were no women's restrooms there. You had to go all the way downstairs, all the way out to the hall, almost to Underwood Auditorium to go to the bathroom. So there was, and they had a little entry room, and we had a little couch, kind of like I'm sitting on now, and a couple of chairs, and that's where all the women would go. You know, that was our meeting room, but that was the only restroom we had. And they had a staff women's restroom where the women who worked for the offices they would not let the women students go. So Aleda told me the story about how they overtook the men's bathroom and they literally took the men's sign down and put women's sign down. So that was like in 70. That was in the 70s, probably about mid-70s when that happened. So when she was telling that, I said, well, I'm glad to hear that, because when I was at Vanderbilt, and God bless them, I love them to death because they got me where I am today, but I will say that back in 1965 or 66, they didn't have any women's restrooms either, and I was on the Law Review, and that's like a prestigious journal that law schools do. So I was on the Law Review as the only woman on the Law Review, and the guy who was the head of the Law Review told me that, well, occasionally we have a woman on the Law Review. There's a spot that we occasionally have a woman on, and the spot for the woman is to make the coffee for the Law Review staff. Now, this sounds weird coming from New Orleans, but I don't drink coffee, number one. I never was a coffee drinker.
Never have.
So I said, well, I don't drink coffee, number one. And number two, there's no place for me to wash this coffee pot. And it was one of those big old percolators, like you see on, weddings and stuff. And so I said, I don't drink coffee, and I don't have a place to wash the coffee pot. So I'm not washing the coffee pot. And if that means I can't be on the Law Review, then give the spot to somebody else who's willing to make the coffee. So bless his heart, Bob Covington, who was the advisor, he was a professor at Vanderbilt. He was the advisor for the Law Review. He came to talk to me, and he said, Rose, you don't realize you just can't toss that away. That's so prestigious. I said, well, how prestigious can it be if my role is to be making coffee? And I keep in mind now, I am still not thinking the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and it applying to women. I'm just thinking, this just isn't right, and I'm not doing it. So he begged me to come back. He said, please, you won't have to make the coffee. So I did go back, and I did. I have a little certificate on my wall. It says member of the Vanderbilt Law Review. So I did end up doing that. So when Aleda Trauger told that story not too long ago about them taking over the bathroom, I went, yay, finally.
It's Banner and Company. I'm Demetria Kalodimos, and we'll be right back. If you're interested in building a more thriving and inclusive community by turning thoughtful generosity into positive change, Well, you might want to know about one of our sponsors here at Banner and Company, the Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee. It matches compassionate givers with worthy causes in ways that benefit all of us. Check them out at cfmt.org. So there you are, studying the law and knowing in your heart that you are being discriminated against.
Yeah.
How come you didn't right then and there write something up?
I just didn't do it. I mean, I just went ahead and I thought, okay, you do what you got to do to get, to get somewhere. And I never really bowed down to anybody. But I didn't actually, at that time, people weren't waving flags. And you got to remember, there were so few women there.
Yeah.
By that time, as I was progressing on, Sissy got a job with the district attorney's office. And Jane Ann, eventually, her husband was in politics, and she got to be the first woman commissioner of revenue for the state of Tennessee. So things were inching along. And also, she was not in my class, but I think she went to the Nashville School of Law, was Muriel Robinson. Mm-hmm. And y'all might know who she is.
She was my judge.
Yes. Muriel Robinson was, she finished, I think, law school the same year I did from the Nashville School of Law. And she's my age. And we were the kind of two women walking around the courthouse because you didn't have women lawyers and they weren't walking around the courthouse. And so Muriel and I got to be friends. We were pregnant at the same time, and we were all getting these stares, from people wondering, what are you pregnant women doing walking around the courthouse? Some of them didn't even realize we were lawyers. But so Muriel really paved the way for women, and she was an outstanding judge, and a very diplomatic person too. She was not a flag waver either. I have to say, I really never was a flag waver. And I think it's because I didn't have many people waving flags. I might have done it if I had known it was going to be, big as it is now. But it was just one of those things. Well, you got to do it. You got to plunge on through. So
we talked about perhaps a missed opportunity to rise up and do something about that discrimination. Mm-hmm. But you did do something.
Yeah.
That ended up in...
Yes, in the law books.
In the case law.
It's in the case books. It's in the case books. When my husband and I, Denty Cheatham, and I got married, we met in like 1972, and I had worked for a corporation, and he had worked for a law firm. He worked with his dad, and then he worked with Cecil Branstetter. And we met in like 1972 and through mutual friends. Didn't know him in law school. But he wanted to go off and start his own law firm. And at that time, I was interested in doing work in the music business, copyright law and that kind of thing. So he said, well, why don't we open up our own law firm? So we did. He and I just tootled around on Music Row till we found a place where we could have an office, and we rented it initially. A couple of years later, they sold it to us, but initially we rented it, and we just started doing our law practice. And I was doing work from people in the music business. I was negotiating recording contracts and management contracts and doing copyright registrations and all those kinds of things. And then he was doing whatever else came in the door. We had a lot of it back during the 70s. We had a lot of pot smokers who were being arrested, and he had a lot of those cases, and so we just did whatever came in the door. And then gradually I started getting a divorce here and a divorce there for people in the music business. So as I started doing them, and people knew, the amazing thing is Nashville being considered Music City is amazing how very few lawyers know the music business. And it's important whenever you do any type of divorce, you should know something about the business of the parties. So I happen to know the music business. I knew where the money came from.
Right.
And so I'd start getting one after another, and before you knew it, I was like, the divorce queen of Nashville for the stars, as they call me, which is ridiculous. But anyway, the people kept coming, and at some point I said, I've got to stop. I've got to stop doing the music stuff too, because it's too much time-consuming work to draft contracts and all that stuff. So I just pretty much started focusing on the music business, but I did have some clients that Denny and I represented. We represented Mel Tillis, and we represented him for over 20 years in his music business work. And then Conway Twitty was a client of ours, and we stayed working with him. And then when he died, we took over the estate and worked on the estate. So Denny and I got married, and we bought a house. And so I went down to the registrar's office, the voter registration office, to change my address to vote. And I knew the woman who was the registrar. And she saw me and she said, "Oh, hi, I saw where you got married." Back then they put your picture in the paper and all that stuff. Miss Palermo marries lawyer. I'll never forget that headline. But anyway.
Miss Palermo, who's a lawyer herself.
Miss Palermo marries lawyer. Yeah. That was the thing in the paper. But anyway, I said, yeah, we bought a house. And so this other lady who's standing at the desk, who's waiting on me, she says, "Oh, well, if you got married, you need to change your name. You need to put your new name down." I said, "I don't have a new name. I have my name. It's the same name." And we had already been practicing law by then as Cheatham and Palermo. So I said, "I'm not changing my name." And she says, "Well, if you don't change your name, you're going to get struck from the voter list." I said, "Strike away. I didn't change my name. I'm not signing that thing as Cheatham. That's not my name." And so I moved. Here's my new address. The next day, I got a postcard. It wasn't even a letter. It was a postcard in the mail telling me I had been struck from the voter list because, and these are the exact words, I'll never forget them. "You have married and or changed your name, so you can no longer vote." So I called Sissy, Jane and Jane Ann, and I said, "Okay, you geniuses, y'all the ones told me at the wedding don't change my name." So now what am I going to do? So they ended up filing a lawsuit in Chancery Court here in Nashville to declare that I didn't have to change my name, that the woman, had a right to keep her own name. So it was a success. Chancellor Ben Cantrell was. I remember he's still around. Ben, if you're listening, thank you. He was the chancellor at the time. He said that I had a right to keep my name, and the state appealed it to the Supreme Court. Yes, the state appealed it. That's how it got to the Supreme Court, because they appealed it. So fortunately, Justice Joe Henry, who will go down as probably one of the best justices we've ever had on the Supreme Court, got the case. And he knew Denny's family because they were all from Giles County, and Denny's daddy was a lawyer in Giles County, and they knew everybody. And when we went in for the hearing, he said, "I don't know why she doesn't want to take that name. Cheatham's a fine old family name in Tennessee, but if she doesn't want to take it, she doesn't have to." So he wrote this opinion, and he wrote a serious opinion, but he also wrote a funny opinion about, Along Came Rose, and did some quoting of Shakespeare. It's really kind of funny. So not too long ago, I donated it to the bar library at the Supreme Court. What he called Palermo One. He sent me and Sissy and Jane Ann a copy and said, "Thought y'all might like to see Palermo One," that they wouldn't let me publish. Yeah. But it has since gotten out, and the Bar Journal printed it.
What is the official citation if someone wants to look it up?
It's called Dunn versus Palermo, and I don't know the citation. I probably ought to. You're the only person that's ever asked me that.
Really?
Yeah, what the citation is.
As another person who never changed their name.
Yes, I know.
I thank you for that.
Well, thank you. I actually had one woman who's on the Supreme Court now. Her name is Sharon Lee. And I was at some function, and she knew Denny. I had never met her, but she came up to me and she said, "I want to thank you for your name case because you're the reason I got to keep my name, Lee." I thought, well, that's really nice. But the funny thing was, when our son was in law school in New York, they had the case, and they were reading it, and these people were going, "Hey, you know these people, this is a Tennessee case. Their name's Cheatham. And that's what his name was, Cheatham. And the woman's name's Palermo. He goes, yeah, that's my mom and dad. So it's in case books all over the country. And occasionally when I see young women lawyers, they'll go, oh, you're that woman from the case.
You know, it's funny, though. A lawyer named Cheatham. I mean, that's
I
a party
know,
joke.
I agreed.
You wanted to avoid it for that reason, too?
Well,
or not really?
he said no. Denny actually said that when I said I'm not changing my name. He said, that's fine with me because when I worked with my dad, we would cheat him. And he said, we got so many jokes about that. Suit me not to have it. So anyway, yeah.
It's Banner and Company. My guest is the infamous divorce attorney, Rose Palermo. We'll be right back. Tell me about the case that got you on 60 Minutes.
Oh,
We're going back. But
we're
this is
going
cool.
way back. Okay, way back. This was back in my music days when I worked in the music business mostly and didn't do divorce. I noticed a lot of people were coming into my office because we were on Music Row and people would wander around. They'd see law office. They'd come in. I'd have a lot of these people that, I mean, they'd be from like Indiana or Georgia, someplace. They'd come in and they'd say, I paid so-and-so, $5,000. They were going to put a record out on me and I can't get them to, they won't do the record and they won't answer my calls. And it was really sad because a lot of these people really did not have much money. So I kind of started...
Or maybe talent.
Yes, and most of the time no talent. So they had a group of people who were in the music business, called themselves in the music business back then, who did what was called custom records. That means that you could go in and say, hey, I want to make a record of myself singing because I'm going to I play at the karaoke club on the weekends and I want to sell my songs. So they had a legitimate business, some of these custom record people. But what happened was you got these really crooks that were telling people, oh man, you are really talented. Just pay me $10,000 and I'll press you. I'll bring you in the studio and I'll press your records for you and spread it out. Well, what they were doing was they were taking the people's money, not even, maybe take them in the studio and do a 3-hour session. And then they'd never hear from them again. They wouldn't put their records out. They wouldn't do anything. So I got really concerned about that because I filed lawsuits for several of these women and these men. It was both men and women. And I might say men probably got taken more than women did. But they would have no way of getting their money back. So we filed lawsuits against several of these people. And we got judgments against them, but the problem was you couldn't collect it. You couldn't collect the judgments. So I had a friend, John Siegenthaler, who used to be with the Tennessean, and I think I called him one day and I said, y'all ought to start doing some stories about and make the public aware that there are these scammers out there because people are coming to
predatory.
Right, it was. So he sent Kirk Loggins to my office.
The late
and I'm
Kirk
going to get tears.
Loggins.
I'm going to get tears in my eyes. He sent Kirk Loggins to my office, and at the time Joan Hamner was working with me, and Joan and I met with Kirk, and he said, "Well, tell me about this music business stuff." So we told him what was happening. So he wrote a few stories about that in the Tennessean, trying to alert people. And then somehow, I don't remember how 60 Minutes got a hold of it, but a producer from 60 Minutes called me and said that they wanted to come down and do a segment about these ripoffs in the music business. So that's how that all came about. And so they came down. Mike Wallace came down, and this was kind of funny because Denny is when he's concentrating on something, he's concentrating. And his office was always a mess. He had papers and boxes and all over it. I had this cute little office at the time. I had like a wicker sofa in there, and I had a cute little French desk, and It was all frilly and cute and girly. And so Mike Wallace just comes in. He's at night. It's got to be done at night. You can't tell anybody. So he comes in and he's looking around. He says, well, I want to go upstairs and see the offices upstairs. So we go upstairs, and there's Denny. He's sitting at his desk, and he's dictating something. That's back when you dictated in the dictating machine. He's dictating something, and Mike Wallace walks in, and he's looking around, and I go, Danny, this is Mike Wallace. And he goes, oh, hey. And then he keeps dictating. So Mike Wallace says, we'll film in here. This looks like a lawyer's office.
So did you film
So I said, and Danny's still sitting there dictating. And I said, Danny, Mike would like to film in here. And Danny goes, well, I'm working. I said, well, can't you pick up your dictating machine and go downstairs just for a little while? They won't be here, long. So anyway, the if you ever see the 60 Minutes spot, the office that it's recorded in is in my husband's office, not mine. Mike did not approve. Then I immediately got rid of the wicker furniture and and a big desk. I got a big desk.
Was Mike tough as nails, or was he
Yeah,
nice?
he was pretty. The rest of the story is, so he interviews me, and then the next day he does his typical Mike Wallace move. He goes in unannounced to one of the crooks.
Colonel Anthony? Yeah. Well, sir.
And he charges in the office, and he goes, this is, I'm Mike Wallace, and I'm here to blah, blah, blah. So he's talking to this guy. This guy looked like Boss Hogg. I mean, he was the epitome of what you would think one of these crooks would look like. And he said, well, I understand you doing this. And the guy saying, no, I haven't done that. And
I did not pay any client any amount of money and never have.
I know that you haven't.
And he said, well, Rose Palermo told me she's got judgments against you. And he says,
Rose Palermo is a prolific liar.
and so I'm about ready to go out to eat lunch with Kirk Loggins, whom I'm going to confess to that I had just done 60 Minutes because I was sworn not to tell him. And we're ready to go eat lunch, and the phone rings.
Rose?
Yes.
Tom, how are you?
Fine. How are you?
Fine. Have Mike Wallace here in the office, and we're on an open speaker.
And I said, I'll be right there. So I had no makeup on. I put on big dark sunglasses, Jackie O sunglasses, a trench coat. And I told Kirk, I said, take me to the Fair and Young building. And he's going, what's going on? I said, just take me over there. He said, it's Mike Wallace here. I said, just take me over there. So I had grabbed all my judgment papers that I had them on my desk from the night before, and I bursted in the office.
Well, here's Rose Palermo.
I said, here, show him these. Ask him what this is. It was just so 60, but none of it was staged, I have to tell you. It was
for real.
For real. And so anyway, he shows him the papers. He says, well,
Papers don't lie.
That's right. Papers don't lie.
and the guy finally admits he's a liar. And, it's a hoot.
Well, this has been a treat for me.
Well, for me too, Demetria, because I remember you from the day you came in my office.
And now I'm going to cry because if you recall, we both had great dads.
Yes, and I remember your dad. I remember your dad to this day. I remember what he looks like.
Yeah.
I remember him coming in your office.
Because he came down and lived with me.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, through
He
the
was-
hardest part of everything.
That's, I don't know if that, maybe this is not correct to say this, but that's what ethnic parents
Yeah,
do.
that's a Greek family. That's an
I know,
Italian
it's an Italian family.
Yeah.
That's what they do.
And I remember you telling me, this is totally normal. I was almost apologetic. Like, this is my dad, and he's
Yeah.
going to be with me. And you were like, I
Bring-
get it.
Right, totally. I'm always real pleased. I have some clients who are from India, and their parents are usually very opposed to anybody getting a divorce or whatever. And one little girl said to me one time, she said, my dad wants to come in and meet you. And I said, oh, bring him in by all means, so that he can have some sense of who's taking care of you and the fact that his daughter is in good hands. So
Absolutely.
I always welcome the parents to come in. I love you.
Love you too. Banner and Company is a production of the New Nashville Banner. Our producers are Steve Harouche and Andrea Tudhope. Original music by Verlin Thompson. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts or go to NashvilleBanner.com. You're in good company. We do a little thing. You see that fishbowl?
Yes.
That in there is a question from a previous guest
Oh.
who has no idea who's going to answer it.
Oh, okay.
So pick one, and then we'll ask you to pose one for someone down the line.
I didn't pick that big one because it looked like it was going to be long.
Maybe.
Okay. Now, the challenge is to read it without my glasses. From Frankie.
Frankie stating, my question is, when will people stop moving to Nashville?
Okay. I'd like to know that too, because I have to tell you that this has opened a whole new world to me of a source of clients. I have a string of clients coming in from California, and they are a challenge in some ways because the laws in California are so different. When they come here, they assume that divorces are going to be treated the same way as they are in California, and they're not. They're totally opposite. The amounts of money you can get on alimony and child support in California is totally off the charts, and here they're stunned when they find out. But I have had more and more people that have come to me over the years, probably in the last 6 or 7 years, that have all moved here from. Lots from California and some from other states, but a big influence from California. And I don't know why I do know why they come here. Because some of my clients who've moved here from California have had horrendous tax problems out there, and they're escaping that. A lot of them are escaping the $1 million houses that are 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath things. So they're finding that they're having good purchase. They think good purchases here with their money, that they're getting a better deal with their money, which causes them sometimes to way overpay for stuff. But I think as long as they see this as kind of the promised land, or they're gonna keep coming. I don't see an end to them coming. And in a way, I guess it's been good for my business, but. But in another way, I don't go downtown anymore. I've lived in my same house for 30-something years, and I don't plan on moving. Stay right in my little Green Hills area.